When I was a teenager, I found a used tarot deck and played around with it, spurring my imagination. I'm now a scientist, so I don't believe in tarot per se, but I do believe in the ability of art, images, and creativity to be able to ignite imagination and understanding. With the artistic help of one of my former students, I've compiled a list of cards to tell a comprehensive story of the human predicament on this year's Earth Day. There are 6 main categories that describe how our modern civilization functions: energy, materials, information, markers, behavior, and externalities. These concepts comprise the stage on which the human predicament plays out. These concepts may seem daunting, but remember, it is a stage, and what happens on this stage is what really determines our future. Systems and the scrying categories then describe how things fit together and provide a forward-looking synthesis. Here we can begin to see the levers and where interventions might redirect the human enterprise. After that, we'll have a section with suggestions on what to do, both as a society and for individuals. First and foremost, energy. Our current culture ignores the importance of energy to our lives. We assign the same economic value proposition to a gallon of gasoline as we do to a cappuccino. Economic textbooks treat labor and capital as the 2 main variables that describe our modern wealth and productivity. But the burning of 1 gallon of gasoline produces the same caloric output as a man working for 2 months. Other economic inputs are important, but nearly worthless without available and affordable energy. Energy is a key variable that enables our present and constrains our future, but our culture is energy blind. Energy is the currency of life. In the natural world, the ratio of energy obtained to energy expended correlates with the success of an organism, because it uses this surplus for maintenance, movement, and reproduction. In the human world, energy surplus dictates the scale of society and how much energy, labor, and time can be directed to other pursuits like technology, hospitals, art, or education. Energy surplus represents that the ultimate ratio that powers nature and human societies is measured in calories. Of all the inputs to our economy, energy is the most central. There is no good or service that contributes to GDP that doesn't first require energy as an input. We need energy to find and extract minerals and resources, build technology, maintain, deliver, and service everything, and to process waste. Without energy, technology is just so many pieces of abstract metallic art. Without energy, a modern city would be a museum. Energy primacy represents the centrality of energy to our histories, our present circumstances, and importantly, our future. There are 5 giant pools of carbon on planet Earth. In addition to the living carbon pools of forests and the soil, there are the pools of stored ancient carbon of coal, oil, and natural gas, which modern culture refers to as fossil fuels. A barrel of oil combined with a machine can do the same work as a human laborer for around 5 years. We burn about 100 billion barrel of oil equivalents of fossil carbon every year. In effect, our machines and global systems are thus powered by a fossil army of 500 billion workers. in addition to the 5 billion actual human workers. Economic textbooks ignore this and just treat the cost of liberating the armies, extraction, as the economic input. The armies represent the one-time massive subsidy of ancient productivity humans have added to modern economies and to our expectations. Our ancestors used their own muscle labor and that of draft animals to do work. In the past 150 years, we've added vast amounts of dense ancient carbon to the global economies and are only paying for the cost of extraction, not the cost of its creation, refining, or pollution. This has boosted our wages, profits, and our population via increased food supply and created a vast smorgasbord of inexpensive products and services. The human economy, which is people times consumption per person, is now 1,000 times bigger than it was 5 centuries ago. The fortune represents the massive economic benefits accruing to human society from powering our machines and technology with coal, oil, and natural gas. Higher wages and profits, lower priced and abundant goods and services. We are depleting these pools of fossil carbon 10 million times faster than they were trickle-charged by daily photosynthesis. Depletion of these resources never stops. The only way we can offset it is by finding new deposits, using new technology to access them faster, or by using less. With technology like fracking, in effect, what we're doing is widening the size of the straw. While we're happy that our mouths are full of metaphorical milkshake, the wider straw brings us much closer to the slurping sound. In the USA, over half of our oil production now is from tight oil in shale formations, which is the source rock. If we stopped drilling, for whatever reason, our oil production would decline by 39% every year. The oil industry needs to run faster and faster now just to stay in place. The easy and cheap stuff is long gone. The draining represents the rapid drawing down of Earth's energy battery, 10 million times faster than Mother Nature built it up, and reminds us that we've based an economic system that needs to grow on something that is finite. Ores, such as copper or iron, and all other materials require energy to mine, refine, and transform. As ore grades get less concentrated, we need more and more energy to process the rock into usable concentrations. The same with food. We use over 10 calories of fossil energy to deliver 1 calorie of food to our plates. Energy is embedded in everything. While direct energy costs at the gas pump or utility bills are a modest percentage of our daily lives, the cost of energy is embedded in every aspect of our lives. As energy costs and prices go up, this will act as a tax on all societal activities. The dominoes represents the concept that as energy gets more costly, everything else in society will get more costly or less available. Lots of things in our economy can be substituted by something else if they're in short supply, but energy can only be substituted by other forms of energy. But even then, it's rarely a perfect substitute. Just like a grasshopper might provide the same amount of calories as nectar from flowers, a hummingbird is uniquely evolved to survive on the sugars from flower nectar and can't readily eat grasshoppers even if they were abundant. Similarly, our current society is heavily dependent on global transport supply chains, requiring cheap, abundant fuel that is liquid at room temperature and can be transported using ships, trains, or pipelines. Energy density, spatial distribution, energy transportability, the amount of land area required, etc., are all aspects that make a joule of one type of energy not useful for a process built for joules of another energy type. The incompatible represents the reality that different energy types possess different qualities and are not interchangeable joule for joule. While energy is the king of all commodities, with the exception of air and water, of course, materials also play a key role in the building of society. Copper, concrete, bricks, glass, clay, sand, metal, rare earth minerals, wood, fiber, and hundreds of other mostly non-renewable inputs are needed to build and maintain the global economy. While energy and economic growth are historically 99% correlated, the relationship between materials and economic growth is even tighter and follows a one-for-one relationship. While there is a slight energy decoupling over time, there is no dematerialization. Just like with energy, there is a finite supply of these non-renewable resources, and we continue to grow our consumption of them faster and faster. Materials represents the physical building blocks of civilization and human systems. If we plan to grow our economy by 10%, we'll need 10% more materials. Information is an umbrella category that includes innovation, technology, efficiency, and the conversion of resources into things. Humans have been using information to transform our environment since we first started making tools, and it continues today with digital code, programming, and artificial intelligence. Information includes ideas, what-ifs, blueprints, and the cultural transmission of data and creativity. It is central to the technologies that underpin modern society. Information represents the ideas and cultural transmission that result in technology and innovation. There are three things necessary for all commerce and growth in modern human economies: energy, materials, and information. We always need all three of these. If we're missing any one of them, nothing happens. Energy is 99% correlated with economic output, and materials are 100% correlated. And we need technology to inform and direct the process. There is an economic trinity representing the macroeconomic foundation of our modern world. We combine information with energy and materials into everything we make or do. When we turn information into technology that makes a product or process use less energy than before for the same outcome, we call it efficiency. The global economy has been getting more efficient by about 1% a year for the past 60 years due to new inventions, ideas, and improvements. But in our current economic system, these savings then get funneled back to grow consumption further. As long as GDP growth is our goal, more efficiency will lead to more energy use globally. The boomerang represents the rebound in global consumption resulting from efficiency and technology gains. We have now developed powerful and advanced devices that harness the wind and the sun. But there is a narrative that moving to these devices is non-polluting and renewable. An oak tree is renewable. A chicken is renewable, as long as there are acorns and other chickens. Wind turbines and solar panels have to be built with steel, complex materials, rare earth metals, and global supply chains, and rebuilt again every 25 to 30 years. Similarly, they involve complexity. If we were to switch all the 1.5 billion vehicles on the planet today to electric, we'd need 1.5 billion batteries, consuming about half the known supplies of lithium. Lithium batteries have a useful life of around 8 years. So after 8 years, all these batteries would have to be replaced. The rebuildable represents technologies that access the flows of the sun, wind, and water, but the technologies themselves are no more renewable than a pickup truck. There are many plans for a larger, mostly low-carbon energy system centered on technologies like solar, wind, geothermal, etc. But technology not only needs to be viable, but also scalable and affordable at a systems level. In almost all studies and forecasts, options like solar or wind or hydrogen appear as costs in dollars per unit, ignoring industrial feedbacks. For example, renewable energy would need at least 4 times the copper demand in the power sector compared to fossil generation. As we scale new technologies, there will be explicit feedbacks that induce new demand for cement, steel, aluminum, copper, ethylene, and other materials, all still heavily dependent on fossil fuels. When we optimize for one variable, like limiting carbon, we often forget many other inputs, which may now seem abundant, that may come into short supply. The scale represents the affordability and scalability constraints from massive shifts to new technologies. The heretofore pinnacle of human information transmission is the recent development of artificial intelligence. When combined with computing power, new algorithms can process what-if iterations many orders of magnitude faster than even recent computers, opening up vast possibilities for discovery and efficiency. Shown here is an image resulting from a text prompt to a free online artificial intelligence app. Create art of dolphin self-awareness using Salvador Dali style. In seconds, this algorithm scoured all information in existence on the web and created this image. I could have, if I'd chosen, created all the cards in this presentation in an hour for free. Algorithms and artificial intelligence are going to change many things, but they are users of energy and materials, not producers. Under the default, they also will continue to optimize for profits, leading to more materials consumption, polarization, and inequality. The algorithm represents the risks and opportunities that arise from artificial intelligence beginning to scale in our societies. Web 3 is the next iteration of humans using information to transform our world. Machine data, blockchain, cryptocurrencies, and the metaverse. The blockchain does create savings for our economy by cutting out the middleman. Where we used to have mortgage brokers, we now can have smart contracts that do the same work at pennies on the dollar. But this trend has 2 problems. One, it leads to wealth and income inequality because we've wrung some efficiency and money out of the system, but now the former mortgage broker is out of a job. And 2, it is a small contribution relative to the magnitude of energy surplus that supports societies. Because even if the mortgage broker is no longer needed, the house and all the things in it still are, all of which require energy and material inputs. Our internet use, devices, server farms, infrastructure are now approaching 20% of all our electricity use. The metaverse represents the perception of decoupling future society from energy and material throughput. Real wealth is comprised of 4 types of capital: natural capital, soil, rivers, trees, resources; human capital, information, skills, knowledge; built capital, tractors, factories, houses, trains; and social capital, our relationships, networks, families. We keep track of the flow of real wealth using various paper and digital markers. Money is a social agreement that allows us to coordinate economically with people we don't know. Our money is not created like economic textbooks describe. The vast majority of money is created by commercial banks making loans not by lending out existing capital, thus coming into existence with no link to underlying energy or the environment, despite that when it's spent, it will always be spent on something that requires energy, materials, and environmental impact. The markers represent the things that humans value. All the money in existence will one day be spent on things using energy. Sometimes we can't afford to pay for the things that we consume with the money that we have, so we borrow money using debt. Debt is money creation on turbocharge. In the past 20 years, which included 2 financial crises, more debt has been the default response to our economic problems. Debt is a claim on future money, and we are doubling our debt every 8 or 9 years, but are doubling our GDP, the income stream that pays back the debt, only every 25 years, and that is before energy availability starts to decline. The accelerant represents the magic wand of debt creation, effectively directing resources we would have been able to consume in the future to today. Why do we use energy, materials, information, and money to create and maintain infrastructure, products, and inventions demanded by human societies? But why do we want the types of products we make, and how do cultural choices change? Human, individual, and aggregate behavior is the obvious but oft neglected driver of our economic and environmental circumstances. While we are special in our abilities, impact, and potential, humans are related to all other living organisms on Earth. We share 99.9% of our DNA with other humans, 99% to other apes, 90% with cats, 85% with cows, 60% with mice, etc. The animal represents the reality that humans are animals and are subject to the same biologic laws. We are a product of a long line of ancestors who were successful at surviving, procreating, and raising offspring to in turn procreate themselves. Through millions of years of mammalian evolution, and 300,000 years in small bands as modern Homo sapiens, our behaviors were shaped by what worked. What was conserved resides in the shapes and functions of our bodies, as well as the structures and neurotransmitters in our brains. As such, today, we go through a totally novel modern world trying to achieve the same emotional states as our ancestors. Our ancestors are still with us, not only in the adaptations of our bodies, but in our minds and in our behaviors. Humans have long been problem solvers. We have been encountering problems as individuals and as groups for millions of years and overcoming them, often by creating tools. Dopamine is a molecule that motivates action and reward, like that of successfully working around a challenge. The trial and error experimentation emergent from the need for stone tools or baskets or a wheel is a hallmark of our species. The dopamine and subsequent innovation resulting from a desire to solve problems remains very much with us today and will be in our future. The toolmaker represents that we have always been, and probably always will be, a problem-solving species. Like cheetahs or gazelles or hummingbirds, humans follow optimal foraging strategies prevalent in the animal kingdom. We prefer high payoffs for our efforts. Rich or poor, we like to invest a little to get a lot, shop at sales, get bargains, and monetary losses feel worse than equivalent gains. The natural world measures gains and losses in calories. Human systems use financial markers, but the behavioral drives are similar. The frugal represents that humans, like other animals, seek gains and are averse to losses. Humans compete for resources and access to mates just like other biological species. A beautiful tail on a male peacock is, number one, expensive to maintain in terms of caloric resources. Number two, makes the bird more conspicuous to predators. And number three, makes it more difficult to get away from predators. All of these handicaps were outweighed over millions of generations by the peahen's preference for flashy tails as a signal of virility, health, and attractiveness as a mate. Depending on the culture, our flashy tails can be a large variety of things. In ancestral times, when we had widespread equality in consumption, we differentiated our status by intelligence, kindness, humor, hunting prowess, storytelling ability, etc. In modern culture, our flashy tails are mostly linked to fame and fortune, private jets, large bank accounts, Instagram followers, or Facebook likes. The peacock represents the biological tendency to compare ourselves to others to increase our social standing, acceptance, and rank. Our modern environment is wildly different than the one our species grew up in. This is true for other species as well. Moths and other insects keep the light from the moon and the stars at a constant angle to their eye and adjust their flight path accordingly. But the presence of porch lights or a flame makes the moth spiral inwards and eventually collide with the flame. This is an example of a supernormal stimuli, novel things in our modern world that elicit very intense and often maladaptive behavioral responses. Obsessing over stock market levels, the number of Facebook likes, or craving pizza or cheesy nachos, or another game of Candy Crush or Fortnite are all examples of this dynamic in humans. The flame represents items in our environment that hijack what were once normal adaptive responses in our ancestors in now unhealthy ways. Like other animals, humans have finite lifespans. As such, we tend to really focus on the present moment and discount the future behaviorally. We care about events this weekend more than we do events next weekend, and next weekend's more than next year, and next year more than 10 years from now. We often make plans to make big behavioral changes tomorrow, but tomorrow quickly becomes today, and our intention resets again to the next tomorrow, a cycle that often results in no change at all until it is absolutely required. Most of our cultural problems are not yet emotionally real to us, and so we get distracted by the myriad shiny things prevalent in our culture in the near term. The shiny refers to our penchant to get distracted by short-term stimulation and comfort and behaviorally ignore longer-term risks and imperatives. Humans communicated in symbols and in sounds long before we developed science, which is why we respond mostly to stories and feelings rather than to facts. We react, then justify our reaction with words. We're the only animal to invent myths that allow us to cooperate with strangers, that allow us to influence millions. We mostly value truth if it serves our situation and the people we affiliate with. So, creating shared cultural stories has become one of the most powerful aspects of our evolutionary heritage. Unfortunately, in a world of widespread and lightning-fast technology, optimized for likes and shares to generate profits, there are now thousands of truths and ardent supporters and defenders for each of them. The fanatic represents the human individual tendency to believe in and defend what one's tribe believes in. We are both a competitive and cooperative species, but our cooperative instincts are mostly a byproduct of intense selection pressure for in-group survival and defense against predators and outgroups, often other tribes. Likewise, in modern discourse, we are extremely defensive and supportive of the people we align with. This affiliation could be as trivial as sports teams or dog breeds, or as serious as political parties, nationality, or ideology. The in-group represents our intense support for those we align with, and the antagonism we direct towards others outside of our in-group. Humans, like ants and bees, are an extremely social species. We have division of labor, multiple generations of help with childcare, and we sacrifice individual well-being, voluntarily or otherwise, for the greater goals of the group. Like a beehive or termite mound, human cultures effectively function as larger entities. With the dawn of agriculture 10,000 years ago, humans began to self-organize towards maximizing surplus. And 2 centuries into the carbon pulse, we have now self-organized as a giant beehive, maximizing money and other digital representations of surplus. The hive represents our ultra-social natures. We are an incredibly social species that builds social structures where the wants and needs of individuals are secondary to the goals of the larger group. The goal of modern culture is economic growth, which has led to numerous positive outcomes for human populations. Downstream of this overarching goal are many other outcomes, like inequality, poverty, crime, violence, addiction, and mental health issues. These are still not factored into the prices we set, but these impacts are internal to the human system. Outside of this system are the ongoing costs to Earth's ecosystems and other species, not included in our prices and therefore our behaviors. Externalities represent the negative impacts from our cultural activities on the natural world. Every single product that contributes to economic growth starts with a small fire somewhere on our planet. In aggregate, the heat from this burning and the heat-trapping impact from the greenhouse gas emissions make the human economic system akin to a giant fire, the heat from which is being absorbed by oceans and the atmosphere. Just like a human body needs calories to maintain our metabolism, so too does the global human economy. And because our system is so dependent on profits, which require growth, which is tethered to energy, which is tethered to carbon, choosing to reduce the size of our energy consumption and emissions is effectively arguing with a forest fire. In addition to using 100% of the extracted fossil sunlight, we are directing around 40% of the annual net productivity from current sunlight towards humans, one species among 10 million. This conflagration from the human system will likely continue to burn until it runs out of fuel. The burning represents the metabolism of an economic system born from the energy surplus of fossil hydrocarbons. In addition to being vast sinks for carbon, forests also act as biogeochemical pumps that create weather systems and transfer the flow of water to clouds back to living ecosystems. Our forests have rebounded from 200 years ago, mostly because we've turned our dependence to ancient carbon in lieu of current carbon. But the demand on Earth's forest and land are still accelerating. Due to clearing land to grow soybeans to feed farm animals worldwide, the giant Amazon rainforest, considered the lungs of the planet, is now putting out more carbon than it's taking up. This is the first time this is happening since humans existed. The wildwood represents the truism that green, healthy forests on planet Earth are life. The oceans contain the majority of the habitable area for life on this planet. Indeed, most of the self-aware, intelligent species that we know of in the universe reside in Earth's oceans. Oceans play major roles in regulation of Earth's natural systems, but are currently being treated as an afterthought in our societal decisions and priorities. The mass burning of fossil carbon creates serious risks to Earth's oceans and their denizens. The oceans have absorbed 90% of the extra heat generated by humans, which is leading to acidification of ocean food webs. The extra fresh water is changing the salinity composition and rates of the Atlantic Meridional Ocean Current, which has already slowed by 15%. Ocean oxygen content is down by 2% and has declined up to 20% in the shallows, requiring fish to move northward. This all risks a transition away from interesting and colorful animals to jellies and bacterial slimes, and potentially a stratified ocean, producing hydrogen sulfide gas, which was a trigger of prior mass extinctions. These risks are in addition to ongoing sea level rise, overfishing, and plastics pollution. The deep represents the precious habitat on planet Earth that is her oceans. In the human sphere, we are adding 10,000 humans per hour to Earth's finite environment, while simultaneously 1,000 humans per hour are starving to death. But outside of the human sphere, populations of animals, fish, and birds have declined by 50% since the 1970s. Wild animals are now only 2% by weight globally, while humans and our livestock make up 98%. The dwindling represents the accelerating disappearance of species and ecosystems on Earth. There are many externalities that are obvious to us now, but there are many environmental impacts from human systems that will continue for extremely long times. There is now more plastic in existence than the weight of all living animals on land and in the sea. A plastic jug lasts 1,000 years, after which it breaks down into microplastics, which are now being found in human and animal lung tissue. Endocrine disrupting chemicals have resulted in a 50% drop in male sperm count in Western males. Plastics give amazing benefits to the comfort and convenience of modern living, but their true long-term cost cannot easily be measured in the very short term. The things that are being taken away go way beyond plastics. Loss of cultures, species, and animal extinctions are truly everlasting. The everlasting represents the long-term impact of current economic practices on the natural world. We know about polar bears and whales, but we are much less aware of small things. Insects and microorganisms are the unseen in our world. They are small and their lives are short, but without them our world would be greatly diminished. We have lost 40% of the world's insects in the last 30 years and continue to lose insect biomass at around 2% a year. Ecologically, insects are akin to tens of trillions of tiny robots doing tasks in natural systems for which there is no replacement. The fleeting represents the tiny and unseen creatures on Earth that we pay little attention to, but are extremely important. We are alive at a time where we are burning 100 billion barrel of oil equivalents of fossil carbon per year to support a vastly unsustainable system of consumption and growth. In addition to the externalities on Earth's ecosystems, seen and unseen, our system is affecting the unborn. Future generations of humans will have far less access to quality ores and energies with which to build and attain their dreams and imagination, because only the dregs will be left. Perhaps more importantly, is they and countless other species will be living in degraded ecosystems with lower carrying capacity and a more hostile climate. There have been 100 billion human childhoods. How many more will there be? The unborn represents the impact of our economic engine on future generations. We live as part of a system. The way the human enterprise works is currently not taught in schools other than perhaps ecology classes. There is a story that links energy, materials, technology, money, behavior, and the environment together in a coherent way. The following cards show how the core pieces fit together. The systems represents an integration of the foundational concepts. When we talk to others about an important issue, it's often hard to find common ground. This is at least in part because we're not using the same boundaries. First, there's the boundary of analysis. A narrow boundary analysis might rightly show that electric cars burn less carbon while they're being driven. A wider boundary analysis would include the energy that went into building the cars, the asphalt from oil used to build the roads, and the extra CO2 from the large increase in copper mining that would have to occur if EVs scale. Thus, electric vehicles are both better and worse for CO2 in the environment depending on one's boundaries. Second, there is the boundary of what people care about. Someone might agree on the facts about climate change, but only care about how it affects their income or their business, while others might care about how it affects ecosystems or future generations. Most people, on most issues, use narrow boundaries in what they include and what they care about. The boundaries represents differing values and different analyses that result in different answers to society's problems for different people. For the past 5 generations, our culture has been riding the upslope of the carbon pulse, the era where we are drawing down Earth's energy battery 10 million times faster than it was built up. And the next generation of humans will be the first on the downside of the carbon pulse. We are living through a metaphorical fireworks grand finale. What's coming doesn't have to be a disaster, but it will mean massive changes to existing institutions and expectations. The anomaly represents that the way we've been living is an anomaly. For most of our species' history, population growth and resource consumption grew at rates close to zero. We have now been accustomed to the anomaly of consistent growth and considered it normal. But given the tight linkage of the trinity between technology, energy, and materials, if GDP were to increase at 3% a year going forward, as most governments and institutions expect, we will use more energy and materials between now and 2050 than we have in the last 2,000 years, and then double that amount again by 2080. The growth represents the massive energy and material requirement of the next 2 doublings of human economic growth. Each time something doubles, its size exceeds the sum of all previous doublings. We humans are emergent from Earth's ecosystem and are utterly dependent on its stability. The ecologist knows the roots of our present system lie deep in the interplay of energy, carrying capacity, population ecology, and trophic cascades. She is aware of the fragile balance of life's continuance in an uncaring universe. This balance has created the ecologist herself, but could unmake her as well. The ecologist represents the true Earth processes, concepts, and realities that are the bedrock of all our modern and all future human systems. In opposition to the ecologist is the necromancer, a skilled and powerful magician that distracts us from reality. The popular and socially accepted necromancers of our time wield fire as if it were a human superpower, without acknowledging its dependence on condensed and stored photosynthesis of ancient phytoplankton, fossil carbon. The necromancer represents the dominant short-term cultural narratives of our time. We have financialized the human experience. We have also financialized our economies. 19th century economist Thorstein Veblen distinguished 2 divisions in human economies: industry and business. Industry is manufacturing of basic needs like food, shoes, transportation, books, etc. Business was the domain of making money, investing, and speculation. Fast forward to 2022, and around 25% of our economy is the FIRE sector: finance, insurance, and real estate. The casino represents the increasing proportion of the human economy that is purely financial. For want of a nail, the shoe was lost. For want of a shoe, the horse was lost. For want of a horse, the soldier was lost. And for want of a soldier, the kingdom was lost. This nursery rhyme alludes to the critical importance of small things as contributing to the whole. Today we live as part of a 6-continent supply chain, where just-in-time transport of microcomponents, metals, ingredients, commodities, and letters of credit flow in a complex series of nodes that keep the global economy flowing. COVID gave us the first clue that there are large risks associated with important precursors and components made in other countries. And the Ukraine-Russia situation is going to accelerate awareness of the complexity risk that we've built. The nail represents the risk emanating from increased complexity, which is dependent on more energy to maintain. Energy is our master resource. There are many technologies that we hear one day will be viable if energy prices increase, like extracting oil shale or turning algae into diesel. But as energy prices increase, the price of everything else increases, meaning that when oil gets to $150 a barrel, the thing we thought would be affordable at that point will have had all its inputs increased in price, and then it will only appear affordable if oil hits $250 per barrel, etc. Much has been made of Moore's Law, of ever smaller and more capable computer chips. Far less has been made of receding horizons, which will make high-energy, high-materials projects increasingly difficult going forward. The receding horizon represents the concept that energy cost increases will mean many, but not all, expected future technologies will practically remain just out of reach. As algorithms get more powerful, even with the benign intent of seeking profits, more and more extreme messages are selected for and shared online. The social reach of individual humans today already has greater reach than broadcast institutions did just 20 years ago. The result is wider and deeper polarization, which results in more extreme political candidates representing our society. Social media technology and tougher cultural times have resulted in people no longer reading the same news, seeing the same facts, or even speaking the same language. The Tower of Babel represents that without shared information, no good decisions or paths can be chosen because they can't even be discussed. There are things we now must not say, things our society can't discuss, and things to which I may only indirectly allude to even here. Stories at odds with those that society currently agrees with are stricken or marginalized. Any violations cause loss of status or worse. This is resulting in the manufactured invisibility of most of our physical reality and an unjustified certainty in beliefs which may not even be sane, much less sustainable. In such a manner, many subjects can only be mentioned on a single day of the year, cloaked deep in metaphor to small audiences. And here we are, on Earth Day, laughing nervously. The forbidden represents those topics or facts that, even if true, can never be brought into public discourse due to the social reaction they would cause. The metaphorical elephant in the room is that other species have no say in their own future or that of the Earth. There are no elephants or dolphins or orangutans represented at the United Nations. There is no embassy for the world's coral reefs, even by human proxy. We tell ourselves that we pursue fairness while being pretty careful about who we think deserves it. So far, elephants don't. Living elephants are as evolved as Homo sapiens, with histories as deep, with larger brains, empathy, communication, and caring. They pose no danger to us, yet they're being expunged from existence for piano keys, wastebaskets, or just converted into money, which takes less room to store. The elephant represents that the room is metaphorically full of elephants, but practically, ecologically, there is no representative for elephants or the other species in the room. We currently live in a system with 19 terawatts of continuous power, akin to 190 billion 100-watt light bulbs turned on all the time. This system, no matter the energy source, is not sustainable. The challenge is that the sustainable level is around half of the current system, or something like that. There are no plans for such a smaller system, let alone any physical infrastructure that is smaller than today's. A smaller system is likely to soon arrive, but it won't be via planning, but by the recalibration of financial claims and the resulting economic shrinkage. The chasm represents the time and events between our current overextended physical and ecological footprint and a smaller, less complex, but more stable system. There currently is no handbridge, even a rickety one, between the two paradigms. An egregore is any non-physical entity that arises from the beliefs and actions of a group of people. The group today is nearly 8 billion of us striving for economic growth as our goal. We coordinate as families, small businesses, corporations, and nation-states to amass monetary representations of surplus. Using abstractions of money and economic theory, we've expanded as a global culture, supported by a 6-continent supply chain and outsourcing our decision-making to the financial system. This egregore results in a physical system which has a metabolism resilient to any small perturbations and has a compulsion to grow, despite the environmental externalities and the declining well-being of the constituent parts that comprise it. Us. The egregore represents the insatiable growth dynamic of human systems emergent from our social structure. Now we want to look at what all this implies for our future. No one can know the future, but a systems overview can inform what is unlikely to happen and what might. The scrying is a systems-informed speculation about the future. We are living through a time of wonder and magic, but fraught with risk under the surface. Financial overshoot, resource depletion, polarization, geopolitical risk, declining trust in media, fragile supply chains, etc. These risks to the human system are on top of real and accelerating collapse of populations in the natural world, ecosystem health, and phase shifts in Earth's biogeochemical processes. The sword of Damocles represents the acknowledgement that we are living during a time when drastic change could happen at any time. We have to learn ways of living meaningful lives at this time while also engaging constructively with the panoply of systemic risks. Most things that are good for our economy at current scale are bad for the environment. In contrast, most things that would be good for the environmental health will hinder the current growth goals of the human economy. This is the predicament of our time. To some degree, this was always the case, but most of history, the environmental impact was small because the scale of the human endeavor was small. The challenge now is how to create stable human societies while protecting the health of the ecosystems that support all life on Earth. The predicament represents the direct conflict that human economies now have with natural systems. We are now doubling our debt, which is financial claims on real GDP, every 8 years or so. We are doubling our GDP every 30 years or so, and this is all while energy supplies have still been growing. As energy supplies start to decline, this divergence between reality and financial representations of reality is going to expand sharply. A contraction, perhaps akin to the Great Depression, is now highly likely when the monetary music stops. We face a very real musical chairs situation, where available resources are the chairs, and there are too many people and claims than there are available seats. Will rich people in rich nations take large haircuts so that everyone still has a, albeit smaller, chair? Or will wealth inequality accelerate, leaving a society much more divided and poorer than it is today? The musical chairs represents the coming date with a financial recalibration. Who will this influence and how? How do we prepare for it? Humans love stories. The stories we particularly love are about how wonderful we are and how much better the future will be. It is very hard to lose money telling such stories, be they economic, religious, or algorithmic. And with them, it's very easy to garner a strong following and popularity. Because of this, and the coming recognition of the importance of energy to human systems, there will be an all-time high for energy laundering, energy sleight of hand, and monetary subsidies for the thermodynamically impossible. We will conflate net energy for gross and benefits for costs. The illusionist represents the stories our cultures promote to make everything seem okay in order to keep living our lives as we have been. Throughout history, humans have often used organized violence to obtain resources or spread ideologies, seeing war as just another option in the geopolitical toolkit. While during good times the costs of war may outweigh its perceived benefits, during bad or stressful times, war is often seen as a valid option. As the growth of the global socioeconomic system becomes less viable due to the loss of subsidies of credit and cheap energy, the option of war may again seem like a way to stave off decline or collapse. At least 8 countries have stockpiled sufficient nuclear weapons to cause major disruptions to the global climate system with even a limited war, and 3 of them could literally destroy essentially all of human and natural ecosystems on the planet in ways even a major asteroid strike could not. This is a risk that must be mitigated and an outcome that must be avoided at all costs. The arsenal represents the human tendency to go to war when times are tough, but now with planetary consequences. As consistent economic growth becomes a thing of the past and continues to become increasingly uneven, people's grounding, expectations, and realities are becoming untethered from the stability of the past 60 or 70 years. Many people find themselves without meaning or something solid or sacred to look forward to. In their absence and without active community support, the result is self-medicating and getting dopamine in different ways, from drug use, shopping, social media obsession, toxic political fanaticism, and other adverse behaviors. The void represents the increasing isolation and lack of meaning for many members of society and the resulting behavior changes. You cannot predict the behavior of a flock of starlings from just an understanding the behavior of a single bird. A single starling follows the movement of the 7 birds closest to it, and from this, complex patterns emerge. In human systems, we are all following the dictates of advertising, media, the markets, and our own personal affiliation with others. We are also subject to the energy, environment, and economic backdrop of the larger human system. But we can't know the future. There are ecological and physical constraints, but within them lies human invention, culture change, and world events that will move us in unexpected ways. The unknown represents pathways, both good and bad, that we can't yet imagine, but that exist under the distribution of possible futures. This unknown is also a caution to not be overly certain on how things will turn out. Collapse is a phenomenon in nature. Everything which is complex, maintained by inflows of energy and materials, must ultimately face decline and collapse in their absence. Hundreds of cultures and empires have risen and fallen over time, but collapse need not be sudden or catastrophic because it can be slow and guided. How people respond in anticipation of those moments determines the future. The collapse of our society is now a real, non-negligible possible outcome, but it is not the most likely outcome, at least not in the near term. Rather, it is part of a distribution which no one knows the actual percentages. Collapse is often used in conversations as a binary term. Collapse, yes or no. The truth is there are gradients, and that depending on the boundaries, many things like insect populations, ocean fisheries, Ukraine, Syria, and inner cities in the United States are already in various stages of collapse. Collapse represents the non-binary nature of various futures. It is a real possibility, but is accompanied by many others. We have used our carbon pulse of extra energy to create many kinds of complexity, from skyscrapers to nuclear submarines to designer drugs and 20 million miles of roads to go to and fro within it. This period was the great complexification, as we took the stored energy of millions of years and made these things which required permanently increasing energy to even maintain. We are now approaching the inflection point, at the beginning of a long careening ride down our peak of complexity. This will manifest as a simplification. For most of us, it will first be experienced by financial system disconnects as our societal load-following algorithm becomes less and less reliable. This will be quickly accompanied by supply chains shrinking and many things we've come to depend on being undependable, from globalization to daily truck deliveries. On average, total physical wealth will now decline for centuries until we're back in a steady-state economy based on resource flows. This complexification, simplification cycle will be the largest event in all of human history. The complexity within which we currently exist must unwind. Whether it becomes a humanitarian disaster or humanity's finest hour is as yet unwritten. The Great Simplification is the social phase shift representing a long-term transition to a lower energy throughput. All of our current financial and government interventions are to maintain the current stability of our system. All of our cultural stories are for a larger economy in the future, whether that's biophysically plausible or not. Because of this, a less complex, lower throughput future is decidedly not being prepared for. There are no plans for such a system, let alone any physical structure that is smaller than today's. Lots of people are working on low-carbon, regenerative agriculture, more inclusive communities, ecosystem reparation, etc. But all these plans assume a stable or even larger system. The most direct step to the Great Simplification will be the walk across a rickety handbridge. This is something we can cognitively imagine, but are emotionally not preparing for. We need more people focused on what that looks like and how to get across the bridge. The crossing represents the likely, but still culturally invisible path to a lower throughput experience for human economies. The things we're going to need to do in the coming decade are not only socially too taboo to be openly considered and planned for, but also politically. As such, a necessary but alone insufficient plan is to create guideposts that inform future decision makers ahead of time. Some sort of advanced policy educating future leaders about the interventions necessary during the Great Simplification, so that constituency, research, break glass plans can inform leaders who then access pre-considered toolkits that today would be viewed as too extreme for modern politicians and citizenry. The Guidestones means educating and creating break glass plans as post-growth scenarios for government and civic leaders. Democracy and our current forms of government were a product from an era of surplus, where a rising tide lifted all boats. As the energy tide recedes, we'll likely need new forms of governance emergent from our knowledge, technology, awareness, and new circumstances. Our challenge is we have no near-term emotional threat that unifies and binds us across national boundaries or even within them. Yes, there is climate change and the protection of the natural world, but these have long-term fuses and wide boundaries. We need to consider what sorts of governance systems will work best in a lower energy throughput society. The Council represents new forms of governing and decision-making that depart from consistent growth-based institutions and expectations. Humans shape our technologies when we invent them, but from then on, it is the technologies that shape us. Social media is not merely a product that we use, it's become the central information processing unit for society. But social media is not acting in the best interests of democracy nor of solving our long-term challenges. The only way to fix that is to change the core objective function of the social media algorithms. We need to change away from what lights up our limbic system and emotions to something more pro-society, something akin to collective wisdom rather than just collective emotions. This does not have to infringe freedom of speech, but probably will require limiting the virality and shareability of content. The Rosetta Stone represents a radical change in the information ecosystem that underpins societal discourse to something that allows a societal discourse. At the end of the movie The Wizard of Oz, the wizard was discovered to be a man with a projector behind a green curtain. In our world, as more of us pull back the green curtain circling our economy, we recognize that our entire lifestyles have been supported by the productivity enabled by cheap fossil energy. One of the few paths ahead would be to fully pull that curtain aside, recognizing the specialness of the remaining high-quality resources. This would mean setting appropriate prices on them to better combine modern technology to extend the reach of remaining energy and materials. A tax on non-renewable resources, coupled with a removal of taxes on human labor and profits, would spur both innovation and conservation. The green curtain represents first a recognition and ultimately a new taxing pricing system that appropriately prices non-renewable natural resources. Education is about the best investment we can make for our collective future, but our current education system is based on the inertia of the past and not preparing our students nor our society for the great simplification. In order to learn, we may first need to unlearn and divorce ourselves from the consensus trance of what was deemed important during the great complexification. New learning will place a premium on systems, embodied learning, hands-on skills, mental resilience, ethics, deep community and social engagement, and the integration with natural systems, and a lot of experimentation, emergence, and fun. The unlearning represents a way we can make a new world possible within our existing society via education. These days, most new technology is really an additional way to use energy, and frequently a way to waste energy in entertaining ways. From the point of view of humans living 200 years from now, it will be conventional wisdom that 99% of all the energy expended in our times was wasted. Yet innovations need not be wasteful or silly. There is technology that will be invaluable to a lower energy, lower raw materials future. We just aren't looking for it because our society currently doesn't reward us for it. Technology that is built to last generations and withstand heavy usage. The innovator represents that the human spirit to invent will be alive and well in a more resource-constrained future. We're just not planning for it. There are still paradors in Spain that function as waysides for travelers that were built 7 centuries ago. In contrast, our current economic system is turning billions of barrels of ancient sunlight into microliters of rapidly dissipated dopamine. And, over time, these trillions of barrels we've used are metaphorically our 2 wishes, and we have 1 wish remaining. Can we invest our remaining low-entropy resources towards something of more lasting value? What seeds can we plant now, culturally, institutionally, and as individuals, that will grow into productive things as we nourish and tend them. The sower represents the using of our remaining high-quality resources as seed corn to invest in different futures than the egregore is pulling us towards. We do need an institutional, technological Rosetta Stone, an information ecosystem that people can trust. But the damage from social media algorithms and the loss of meaning and waning economic growth has already splintered our society into dozens or even hundreds of subgroups with different lenses, hot buttons, and priorities. We're going to need facilitators who can rise above their own beliefs and interests to midwife conversations about our collective future between peoples who, under the current zeitgeist, can't or won't talk to each other. The mediator represents the need for diplomats between today's manifold mimetic tribes. What is a pangolin good for? In some places, the answer might be that the scales of the pangolin can help a variety of health conditions, or that the meat tastes good. 2.5 million pangolins per year are captured illegally, and all 8 species of pangolin are now at risk of extinction. But this was a trick question. When we think of what is XYZ animal for, our current cultural impulse is to think, what is it for in human systems? In reality, a pangolin, also called a scaly anteater, is a mammal that followed its own evolutionary line to arrive in 2022 with us on planet Earth. There are 10 million other similar stories of the cousins, nieces, nephews, uncles, and aunts we share this planet with. The pangolin represents the potential change in cultural consciousness from valuing species for what they contribute to human economies to valuing them in their own right. We are the first generation of our species to be able to understand who we are, where we came from, how we got here, what is possible, and even to imagine how we would get there. But our culture has convinced itself there are no practical impediments to humanity expanding to the stars with a steadily growing civilization of increasing energy and materials. There are fundamental problems with this logic. There are a few gifts we've been given on this one-of-a-kind planet: geological concentrations of metals, fertilizer, clean fresh water, fertile topsoil, and fossil energy. Everything else, from nuclear power to solar to a human population nearing 10 billion, is an indirect offshoot of these 5 basics. All 5 of those basics are inexorably shrinking. The thing about cleverness is that it can't use what isn't there. And in most of our universe, what we want isn't there. For too long, many of us mostly ignored a suppressed aspect of our genome: wisdom. That's the making of decisions about the future based on how reality works, and considering the future to be a real place worth optimizing for ourselves and others. The one-eyed man represents the inflection point our species is now at. Can we incorporate wisdom into our cultural decisions in the 21st century, or merely continue to be a metabolic egregore? Many of us are becoming aware that we are not alive at normal times. But something we often forget, or at least take for granted, is that we are alive. Take a pause, take a breath, and for a second just appreciate the wonder at being a human being alive on this blue-green planet spinning in space against all odds. Appreciate the absolute wealth we have in our lives, as opposed to what we lack in comparing ourselves to others. Be grateful for the simple things: music, friendship, dogs, forests, sleep, sunrises. Before we can deal with the future, we have to ground ourselves in the present. There is so much to experience and witness and be a part of. The future will get here one day, but we have to first remember to live today. We have a cultural aversion to facing reality. But for those of us who do choose to face the converging synthesis of our situation head on, a common response may be grief and sadness, a panging of loss for the futures we once thought possible. This is actually a healthy response to hearing and understanding this human Earth situation in the 21st century. Grief is intertwined with love. If you didn't love something, you wouldn't be capable of grieving for it. So it's okay to grieve, actually appropriate, and to share this grief with your loved ones and eventually channel it into living, loving, and helping in your corner of the world. Sometimes thinking about all this can be overwhelming. We feel that the challenges are too great, and so we move towards apathy and resignation. It's important to remember that just as there are many things outside of our control, there are a good number of things in our control. There are goals that are conditional on if we get that job or not, or who wins the election, or what central banks do. But there are also unconditional goals that we alone can make happen. Planting a garden to grow some food, meeting new people in your community, getting in better shape, learning about a topic you care about. Goals are important, and setting unconditional goals gives us a feeling of agency that we often lack in these chaotic times. These goals can be as modest as taking responsibility for our own lives, or they can seek to affect change on large scales and in original ways. Our society, at least in material terms, is one of the richest in history, yet so many people are miserable. We're so rich, we can have goodies and entertainment and stuff delivered to our houses and watch a million programs on our TVs and computers. All of this we can do without needing other people. But the world is about to become a much larger place again. After everything is said and done, once basic needs are met, the best things in life are free. Among them are the relationships and interactions we have with other humans and other beings. Community and kinship are going to be incredibly important as events in the coming decade unfold. Develop friendships with people who share your values. Meet your neighbors. Build a community. Social capital, networks, and kinship are soon going to be about the most important asset you could have. One unconditional goal is to sharpen the sword, and you are the sword. The shiny and the flame are constant distractions from being the best we can be. We each have only so much willpower, and in stressful times, it's all too easy to let good habits slide. But developing mental, physical, and even spiritual resilience is of utmost importance. In Buddhism, the sharpening comes from meditation and acts of compassion. We sharpen the sword by making ourselves better human beings and better agents of change. When we sharpen the sword, we quiet our own ego so that we become a calming influence and a source of inspiration and strength to others instead of a source of anxiety. The sword is who you are and who you can be. Keep sharpening. If we connect the dots of our situation, it becomes reasonably clear that our society will not en masse change our ways before a crisis. The great simplification will, at some point in the not-too-distant future, be upon us. But as individuals, knowing this, feeling this, can empower us to simplify our lifestyles, behaviors, and expectations. We can anticipate a world of higher price and lower availability of energy and things, and make personal steps to prepare for that societal phase shift. How much stuff do we really need? What are the things we own that bring us joy? How much could our lives improve if we downsized and simplified? These shifts wouldn't be to save the planet, but to make ourselves more flexible and more adaptive to whatever future arrives. We can simplify first and beat the rush. There is a time to speak up, use your voice, and be a champion for change. There is also a time to step back and let others who have something to say be heard. None of us can be experts in everything, and frankly, there's always something we can learn from someone else. Navigating through the future is going to require us to listen to others around us and hear unique perspectives and wisdom. There may come a time when you feel the call to become something more than you've always been, a call to let go of one way of living without being clear of exactly where you're headed. But our current world, with so much risk and anxiety, can lead to uncertainty and angst on which path to choose. Don't worry so much about the specific path as the general direction. My writing colleague and good friend DJ White was a geologist out of college, but knew he loved dolphins, none of which were in Indiana where he lived. So he took the leap to move to Hawaii and volunteered cleaning dolphin tanks. A simple step. 20 years later, he was one of the most successful ocean activists of our time, saving perhaps millions of dolphins via removal of drift nets and other campaigns at an organization he founded called Earth Trust. We don't need to know our specific future paths. Merely take a step on a path in a direction that feels true and important to us. We will wend our way to the right destination over time. Despite being alive at the peak of complexity, the storm clouds building on the horizon are scary and daunting. To acknowledge and engage with the risks is not the default behavioral path for most people. We will need to be brave to resist the consensus trance of popular memes and beliefs. We will need to be brave to speak uncomfortable truths in the face of power. We'll need to be brave to seek long-term social and environmental rewards over immediate comfort and convenience. Life is always richer than we can envision, and risks are going to have to be taken. Most people will quietly go along with events as they arrive, which is why we will need brave humans to rise to the challenges coming our way. Not only do people differ in their boundaries of analysis or in what they care about, but also in their means and abilities of engaging with the human predicament. Most people watching this video have access to shelter, plentiful food and medicine, and access to the accumulated knowledge and information on the internet. If we compare ourselves to all humans living before us or after us, many of us currently possess effective superpowers by comparison. As guardians of the future, of knowledge, ecosystems, populations, ethics, and cultural seeds, we have a responsibility to play a role. As members of a social species in a social media-dominated culture, we too often base our decisions, behaviors, and even values based on what we believe others will think of us when we do or say something. Despite this, each of us has our own internal compass of what is right and what is wrong, what is true or false, and what is important and what is trivia. More of us need to resist the consensus trance of our culture and follow our intrinsic signals, ethics, and advice. When I am buffeted by social pressures, which is quite often, I've found that going for a hike, then sitting quietly in the woods to process, meditate, and make plans based on my own gut feel and counsel is both grounding and helpful. It's a great feeling to be your own friend and feel confident that your decisions and actions are guided intrinsically, not externally. Take some time to decide what in the world is sacred to you, what ethics, which beings, which places, and which aspects of our living world. You needn't tell anyone what these decisions are, but they should be the basis of meaning and mission to you, your internal compass for where you should be and what you should be striving towards. This set of decisions may be the most personal you'll ever make. We have popular books and movies where time travelers going back to the past worry they might do some small thing that radically changes the future. But hardly anyone today thinks they can radically change the future by doing something small in today's world. Yes, our situation is daunting and there are no easy fixes, but the actions of individuals and small groups are the only thing that will change the future. The only thing that ever has. As you go through your life, and perhaps aspire to make large changes in the way things ultimately turn out, also make small changes that make the world a better place. Kindness, grace, empathy, and creative actions. We are not alive at normal times, but each of us has unique powers to be catalysts for change in the situations we find ourselves in and in our interactions with others.